Chop it down. Chop it down. You gon' chop it down. Chop it down. You gon' chop it down.
I just appreciate everybody
watching. Watch him throw the ball. We gon' pick it off. You gon' let him hit the hole or you gon' cut it off. You gon' play through fourth and long or you gon' punt it off. Your defenders, heavy hitters, put your pads in. Don't be looking for the ref to throw no flags in. Keep the helmet on, keep the cleats tight. You the type to want to win by any means, right? You should look alive. This is Trap or Dive.
Yes, sir. Welcome back to another episode of Trap or Dive Podcast, provided to you by 214 Media and SB Nation's Hogs Haven. I'm your host, Mual, Coach Mual, Hen Dog Mual, all that good stuff, man. Let me go ahead and get the third guy in there. Boom. AJ and Dre is in here as well. Fellas, what it do, baby? How y'all feeling, bro?
Never a dull moment, is it, huh? I mean, even after the draft, we got Washington news out the ass today, man. So, it's never a dull moment. I'm feeling good.
Nah, it isn't, man. And you know what's crazy? I wanted to save it for, like, let's get one thing out the way before we get into it. But to your point, the news that we're discussing or that we will get into is over a year old. Like, and the guy that I truly sometimes dislike for his incredible ability to provide misinformation on a report, or outdated report, has got everything circulated once again. So it's messy, but here we are. But it's also a good conversation because AJ asked us a question in the chat, which I thought was it was important to ask. And then also, it kind of dives into just instead of speaking around the topic for those who may not be aware, Sam Howell is in the news once again. The Commanders put out fed some comments and quotes to John Keim, respected reporter, and he put it in his article, well-written article, on why the Commanders are moving forward with Sam Howell. But ultimately, it's just become another lightning rod on social media. So we'll see how this goes. But before we get into it, man, if you are new to the Trap or Dive Podcast, and whichever way you are listening, whichever way you are watching, make sure you hit that follow button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. It's truly appreciated. If you got time, hit us with a rating and a review. We definitely appreciate it as well. Dre, man, was you watching the games this weekend?
So the playoff games, I try to check in on a little bit of them from time to time. It's just, I don't know, man. The Wizards that really kind of messed me up with the NBA, man. I'm not even.
I ain't even think you was going to Washington.
Yeah, I mean, it's just as far as like they just kind of drained like my interest in the overall watching, but I still keep up with it. I mean, I love watching. I still like watching the Warriors. Even though I don't want them to win the championship this year, I like the Lakers and Warriors. It's been entertaining. I mean, even last night's game, I didn't watch it, but I like to keep up with the stats. But I hear Jokic killed it, man. So it's been fun. I'll probably start getting into it, especially tonight. I'm gonna watch the Lakers Warriors tonight.
Yeah, it's crazy because that what's going on, Amani? My bad. I appreciate you checking in. How you feeling, big dog?
It's good, man.
Yeah, like the Nuggets game was interesting because they were going back and forth, throughout the whole night. And then obviously Jokic is out here pushing owners in the stands and stuff. So matter of fact, it was some news that literally just came out. I forgot to check my phone. Let me see. ESPN said something.
Is he getting suspended?
I'm about to. He avoids suspension, but got fined $25,000.
They ain't finding Jokic.
Yeah, but
I mean, they not suspended him. They not suspended him.
Like, people don't understand. So if people are looking at it from one lens, right, you see that the owner, quote unquote, flopped, right? But in the same vein, Jokic is like, he has to be at least 100 pounds bigger than the owner, bro. Like, if he even taps him with his elbow, it's possible that he literally does fall back like that. Flailing of your arms, that's one thing, but you can flail your arms and still get knocked back. Like, so I think to that point, it was kind of interesting that a random fan got escorted out the game, and Jokic stayed in, and the owner didn't go nowhere, but a random fan got kicked out. Like they had to get rid of somebody, and they picked a random fan who touched Jokic. So it is what it is. The Lakers games, it's weird, Dre, because like I love that series too, but then like it's all blowouts. But I love watching it.
Every game, whoever wins is blowing them out. Yeah, but man. I will say, man, the Suns and Nuggets outside of the Jokic stuff, man, KD and Devin Booker balling. Like them two dudes is balling. It's just the two of them too.
Yeah, star power, bro. Without that boy Chris Paul, man, who always found a way to let his team down in the playoffs. and at this point,
the criticism this time.
At this point, it's like you look at Chris Paul, and it's a repeated trend with that man. Like nobody can count on him after April. Like he continuously gets hurt in the playoffs, bro. And at this point, it's fair to criticize him if you ask me. Like find a way to stay healthy, bro. Like you need something.
He's the point guard, right? Point guard, you gotta
point guard, man. Okay, let's go ahead and tap into this thing, man. Dre, we have some news, some transaction news. Chase Roullier was officially announced as a post June 1st cut designation. So there is no more Chase Roullier on this roster. I believe Chase Roullier was a draft pick of the 2017 draft class, 6th round pick, I believe, 5th or 6th round pick for the Washington Redskins at the time. So that officially gets him off the roster. But shout out to the people at Hogs Haven, Bill and Bangkok, who wrote the article to give us an update on what has to happen in the next few days. So there needs to be 2 more cuts even after the release of Chase Roullier, because Washington still has 12 undrafted free agents, rookie free agents that's going to be coming aboard, and then obviously the rookie draft class as well, who has to come around. So salary cap and roster limit is at play for the Commanders. And obviously Washington has 80 people on the roster right now. They did the math for us already. And then you have a 90-man limit that you have to go into camp with. So there's a few more cuts on the way. I mean, at this point, Dre, I'm not necessarily sure. Like I always said, even after they drafted Forbes and the nickel guy that I always y'all got his name for him. What's that boy's name? Y'all call him
Quan Martin?
Quan. I'm about to say I don't call him Quan. I call him Zartavius.
Okay,
but
you might want to start calling him Quan.
why is his name Quan, bro?
I don't know, man. You know, it might be one of them hood things. He might have grew up in the hood and they just started calling him Quan for some reason. Man. We gotta find out his middle name, man. It might be Saquon or something.
It's actually funny. I'm looking at the depth chart on Hogs Haven right now, and they got they don't even put Jartavius, it's Quan on the jump. So I'm like, okay, all right, but yeah. So like, I initially thought that Kendall Fuller could have been a cut candidate for Washington after they drafted Quan, and I took some time to think about it, and I don't necessarily agree with my initial thought anymore. I do think that Quan is in a position to become a full-time slot guy. I do think that. However, I don't think the money that Kendall Fuller is making is significant enough to have him cut, especially when Washington needs depth. Now, if Kendall wants a trade and he wants somewhere where he knows he's going to get significant time, or he's going to be able to start at the same position that he started last year for Washington, that's one thing. But I don't see him getting cut right now. I do think that the obvious one that is lingering right now is Andrew Norwell on the offensive line. Obviously, like you said, Chase Roullier is gone. Andrew Norwell is a guy who, if we always listen to Ron and how he talks about people on the left guard spot, especially with the competition and things like that, Andrew Norwell is never mentioned. and even when people in the beat reporters bring up Andrew Norwell, he has little to say about him. I think that kind of tells us that he's going to be one guy to go. Excuse me. If you ever think about another guy that may end up getting the snip, it's probably somebody whose name we aren't even thinking of, like a low-level type of player. I don't know if you have any ideas, but what are your thoughts on? I would assume everybody kind of thinks thinks the same, but I'll give you the floor. What are your thoughts on Chase Roullier getting the snip, and then who else is behind them, possible names who's going to be following Chase Roullier.
Yeah, I think the last show we actually kind of mentioned Chase Roullier as one of those guys that would be on that like post June first cut designation list because the Ricky Stromberg draft pick. I mean, when he got drafted, and we also talked about the Nick Gates signing. I mean, those are two guys that can play center. You know, they can play guard, they can shift in and out. But though that the drafting of Ricky Stromberg to me was like the final nail in the coffin for Chase Roullier. I was like, where does he fit now? He doesn't fit anywhere on this roster now that they drafted this guy because initially we thought Nick Gates would be probably the starting center, but then you draft a Ricky Stromberg who is a center, and he was a pretty damn good one in college, and he seems like a Chase Roullier type of guy. So the writing was on the wall at that point. And as far as other guys that I think that could be on that list, obviously Andrew Norwell, as you mentioned, I think he's definitely a candidate to be that guy. And the other guy that I'm thinking about that could be on this list is Logan Thomas. I mean, I think he may be that guy that they end up cutting, because they have a lot of those young tight ends in the room that they seem to like. Now, none of these guys, pop out to me as a tight end one or in any case. But then again, Logan Thomas didn't pop out as tight end one last year either after his injury. Like, he just didn't look like the same guy he was pre-injury. He looked a little slower, and he just didn't seem like that, that same type of player. So that's a guy I'm looking at that can possibly get cut. You still have John Bates on the roster. You have Amani Bates behind him. I mean, what's his name?
Amani Rogers.
Yep. Yeah, Amani Rogers.
John Bates, Amani Rogers.
And then it's the other guy. What's his name? Hodges, I think, the tight end. Yeah, so, I mean, they got a couple of young guys they like, but they're all young and unproven. But, again, Logan Thomas didn't seem like that guy last year either. So, he's a guy I think that could be that candidate outside of maybe a Kendall Fuller. But again, I'm kind of with you on the Kendall Fuller thing. I don't think Kendall Fuller gets cut yet because I still think you need a Kendall Fuller around because, as you said, we don't know if Quan Martin is ready to step in and be that full-time guy. I mean, he probably can't be real sure about Quan. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, they drafted him second round. I mean, they obviously think high of him, but I don't know if they just want to be so sure of him yet to say we got to get rid of a Kendall Fuller. But I think the other candidate could be Logan Thomas.
Yeah, that was my thing with Kendall. I was in a space where initially, so the first night, Thursday night, I'm in a space where I know that Forbes is going to be kicked outside. He's automatically outside. And I'm sitting here thinking, so what does that mean for Kendall? And I don't necessarily think that he's the best candidate to move inside and play slot corner. That's kind of where I was I remember where he's at, what he did in slot, and he didn't look too good. And even on the outside, that was my thing. I said that all last season. I just didn't really think that he had it. And I also thought that quarterbacks didn't challenge, they weren't scared to challenge him. Of course, he made plays towards the end of the season. He got on a roll in terms of how he was able to read the alignments and just even understand what's going on from a play standpoint. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to perform it at a good level all throughout the season. And I don't think that he can do that at slot. But to your point, Quan hasn't seen any reps, and it would be premature, as you said. It would just be premature to really look at Quan and Kendall and say, all right, he can get the boot, and Quan hasn't even played it down yet. That could be a major mistake. And so it's going to be safe. It's going to be good to sit here and see what Quan can do. And I think it's ultimately everything will depend on where he's at as the offseason moves along, as training camp moves along, and that may determine Kendall Fuller's fate in terms of their confidence level, because they're not scared to play the younger guys. I think that's part of the reason why Jamin Davis, if you look at the linebackers, is kind of leading the helm in that position. They were comfortable letting Cole Holcomb move on and bringing in a Cody Barton and having Jamin Davis run the show. Behind him is Khalid Cousin and David Mayo. Another person that I can think of, if you talk about random names who really holds special teams value to the team, is Nathan Gary, who is a random linebacker name where you can think of because they're kind of thin at the defensive line because of the suspension to what's his name, Shaka Tony, and everything outside of that are younger players. So you can look at a Nathan Gary and be like, okay, he's a guy we can probably pick up after the final cuts. So these are kind of some random names, and even Rashad Wildgoose, who's really, I don't think nobody's tripping off letting him go. Like,
But see, Mo, something that a lot of people are forgetting too. Washington claimed Cam Dantzler off of waivers, and that's a guy who, I mean, he was a 3rd-round pick a couple of years ago. And Minnesota, he played in Minnesota. They seem to like him up there. I mean, he played at Mississippi State as well, like Emmanuel Forbes. But I mean, he's a guy that people think, I mean, even Minnesota fans kind of thought highly of him before he got injured. So, I mean, if he's a guy they claimed off of waivers, obviously they feel a little bit highly of him. And he's a guy that could be someone that's works his way up the depth chart. So that's another guy to keep an eye out on as far as CB depth. So a guy like Wild Goose, those type of guys, it may not be room for them this year.
Yeah. No big.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I mean, I think, with the cornerback position, some guys just going to have to make their way on the team due to special teams. You know, Dantzler pretty much out the league in a sense because of how he wasn't really performing in Minnesota, but just having that big body, maybe he can be a press outside corner. But, I mean, I don't see Fuller getting cut on this team. Like, I can't see that. It'd just be negligent of them to do that because you have so much inexperience and you have injury concerns with Ben St. Jude's.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, who's coming in to play slot? Like, do you try to keep Danny Johnson on the roster again? Because that's essentially what happened is once they had to move Ben back outside, they really didn't have a slot. You know, they were just trying to make it work with Danny. And then there was never really a concise plan and togetherness of that defensive back group because of the fact that it was Ben, William Jackson, third, and Kendall Fuller. And then once they moved William out the picture, it was like finally this group is getting to kind of work together and stay in the same unit and communicate better because that's really what it boils down to is that communication on the back end. But I think it's Logan Thomas and Andrew Norwell that get the release. I can't see the value in Norwell at this point with how many guys are position flex. Then on top of that, he didn't play well last year. And then for Logan, you can't pay him that kind of money. And he don't provide nothing to the team at this point because he'll never get that agility and burst back. He already didn't have much anyways.
At 32 years old too.
Yeah, putting on that weight and the type of ACL tear he had, it'll never be the same. So you might as well give him more bump to Turner, Amani Rogers, Curtis Hodges, the John Bates, or if they just don't look good, there's still some free agent tight ends out there on the marketplace that you could bring in. But I just don't see the value. And Logan's not a blocking tight end either. Like, he's learning the position. Even though he's 32, you would think he's been doing it for a long time. But Logan really, really still young and learning the position and getting playing time, taking what he's learned off the field and having to do that on the actual field. So then you put in the injury. Nah, dog. I think Logan's getting 8 a year.
Yeah, I was really about to say it's two things. Yes, to the 8.6 mil he's gonna be making, or he's gonna be on the cap in 2023. And then secondly, to your point, AJ, I actually think it's kind of wild. Out of all people, you're being nice today. Logan, you're saying he's still young to the position. He's just not good at blocking. Like, it ain't nothing he got to learn. He just sucks. He's not a good blocker. It is what it is. And just some people just don't have it in that area. Like, sure, he can occupy somebody, but he gonna get thrown out the club. Like, when it comes down to it, if he got to get his hands dirty, he's gonna get thrown out the club.
I mean, he's a former quarterback. You got to remember that. Them quarterbacks don't like to block.
Yeah, he ain't with the smoke for real. Monty, appreciate you checking in, big dog. Everybody that's just checking in, welcome, man. Appreciate y'all joining. If you're watching on Twitter, I should have said this initially as well. We appreciate you watching. You can stay there. But if you do want to be a part of the show, try to migrate over to the YouTube channel. It's on, I think it's in my profile's bio. You can click there and be a part of the show, but we can't see comments through Periscope for whatever reason. It doesn't let you see it. So, I don't disagree with Logan. It's going to actually be interesting. It's just weird, man, because we talked about it for a second, how they didn't talk about Andrew Norwell, but they definitely say they have plenty to say about Logan Thomas, and they really like Logan Thomas. And And when you look at him, and I got to give him credit because I'm not going to be completely unfair to Logan. He did have a couple games towards the end of the season. Like, it took him a long time to start like feeling himself again. And that was towards the end of the season last year. And I don't know if that's enough to keep him on the roster going into 2023 season, but he did have some games where you saw he was a little bit quicker in and out of his routes for whatever that's worth. His straight line speed was better for whatever that's worth once again. And it was noticeably better from the beginning and middle of the season as opposed to the end of the season. So I had to give him credit. He did look better towards the end of the year. But again, when you're making $8.6 million and like money and politics come into place because they love their tight ends behind them. So
and Mo, speaking of the tight end position, I actually forgot to mention Cole Turner. I wonder what they think of him. I mean, that's a guy they drafted, 4th round last year? Maybe, he was injured a lot last year, so we didn't get to see a lot of him. So I wonder if he's going to make that ascension or that step this year. Yeah, so that's another guy probably going to keep a little bit of an eye on over the summer to see if he's made any strides. But, we thought he could be something last year out of Nevada. So, he's another guy to keep an eye on at the tight end position.
My man Hawk, appreciate you checking in, big dog. Yes, and y'all know, like I said it last year, I'm a fan of Cole Turner. So, we'll see how he looks in year 2. Hopefully, he has a healthy season. It's just it is very unfortunate that his first year in that he just battled the injury bug. And hopefully, if it's a consistent problem, that's definitely not good for anybody, the team or for himself at all from a career standpoint. Fellas, we beat around the bush for a little bit, but it's time, man. It's time. We kind of know what's going on over the past day or so. Washington has been in the news lately, primarily for tampering reasons, alleged tampering reasons. But the backstory behind that, it's stemming from a 2022 report from John Keim in his article. And from what we all remember, oh, look, here it go. Hawk said it before I even got to it. But a report from last year where they kind of shed light in John Keim's report that, their QB search was far and wide. It spanned from all 32 teams to possible available quarterbacks on all 32 teams. And one of the quarterbacks that was mentioned in the article was Andrew Luck and what he was up to 3 years into retirement at the time. However, to be honest with you, if y'all want to talk about that, that's one thing, right? We can talk about it. Well, I'll put it this way. Y'all can talk about it. But my biggest thing is the relevance to today. And the relevance to today is the article that Keim put out this year and a couple of days ago, where he mentioned what Sam Howell did for the staff for him to be considered quarterback 1. Now, I have several thoughts on everything that's going on behind Sam Howell, and I know everybody on this show right now has several thoughts behind Sam Howell, but for context purposes, to start this conversation is the following. Washington scouts gave Sam Howell a part of the article was that Washington scouts gave Sam Howell a grade that was equivalent to a 2nd round pick with their draft process. And the quote in the article goes as following. Some of them gave him a 3rd round equivalent, but others had him in the late 1st. One source said, leading into the draft, that had they not traded for Wentz, they would have targeted Howell on the 2nd day. When he was still available in the 5th round, the Commanders pounced. Quote, unquote. I'll leave it there and we can generate the conversation from there. But I guess I'll start with this. And I don't think I'm about to hold back at all because look, it's be honest, this is their last year. This is Ron last year. This is this whole staff's last year. And it's not that I was ever holding back. But I think it's important for all of us to kind of understand the situation that we're getting into. If you are a person who has been believing put it this way, this is easier. I'm okay with them going with Sam Howell. I have said this all season long. I'm okay with them going with Sam Howell, but I'm not okay with how they arrived at Sam Howell. I think everything that they did when it comes to their evaluations, their arguments made for Sam, it's all circumstantial, and it's all look, we're not in the best position to acquire a top quarterback. So let's build up the biggest argument for why we're going to go with Sam Howell. And I don't respect that part of everything because it's not necessarily telling us the whole truth. If he was a second round grade, I don't understand why you had to wait to the 5th round to grab him. Why does Carson Wentz have to do with anything related to Sam Howell if Sam Howell is your guy? For comparison purposes, when you look at 2012, in theory, Mike Shanahan says he's on board with RG3, but RG3 wasn't his guy. He wasn't going to be willing to trade up for all of those picks. I mean, he wasn't willing to trade all of those picks to get a quarterback in RG3. So what does he do? He gets a quarterback 3 rounds later. He doesn't wait to the 6th or 7th round to get a guy. He gets Kirk Cousins. And he was going to get Russell Wilson if Russell Wilson wasn't taken. So like he has these guys that he's identified and that he was willing to go with. And he didn't wait until the perfect opportunity. He had these guys, and if they were available to him earlier, he would have grabbed them. And I think for Washington, if you really like this guy in the point of a 2nd or 3rd round, but Carson Wentz deterred you from getting him, was he really that highly evaluated or highly valued from your scouting department and from your coaching staff? This sounds like a guy who you were hoping you can develop, which in theory it kind of worked out in your favor because he only played 1 game for you in 2022. But ultimately, I'm in a position where when I look at Sam Howell, but also I look at the messaging that they're saying with Sam Howell, I think that it's another dangerous avenue that they're going down because they're putting all their eggs in the Sam Howell basket when they don't really have to. They initially started this whole thing with a quarterback competition, giving him the opportunity to start. Not giving him the keys, not handing him the keys. He has to win it. And all of these arguments in these articles that's being produced, and that's no disrespect to the people who's writing the articles. It's the people who's giving these people the quotes and giving these people the sound bites, the tidbits that tells them or tells the public, this is why we love this guy so much. Like you had a person. Like we already know that you love this guy because of practice and because of the players said that this guy knows what he's doing. But at the end of the day, like how many times do you have to say that? How many different ways do you have to say that? I don't necessarily think that that's safe, man. And for Washington to continue down that line of saying this is why we love him so much, but you only chose to play him 1 time, and that's the last game of the season, and it wasn't initially the whole game; it was a half. And you had to be convinced that he needed to be in the game because he was going to start one quarterback that wasn't Sam Howell. And then secondly, you didn't even give him an opportunity after you done ran through both quarterbacks that you thought couldn't get the job done. Like all of these things kind of tells me what you're saying now doesn't align with anything that you did prior to February. Like when that season ended, nothing told me that you really believed in Sam Howell. And all of a sudden that game against the Dallas Cowboys convinced you that he was the guy that you can trust in moving forward. I don't buy that. And I think it's dangerous for anybody to believe in that and to run with it like it's gospel. Sam Howell might work, right? He might be the guy. But it's not because the coaches believed in him. I think it's because Sam Howell is who he is. And that's another thing that I said in the preseason. Like, if Sam Howell shows that he's got it, you can't deny it. Like, that's just the person who he is. That's just the player who he is. He's going to be a person who continues to grow, who continues to make plays. But it's not because Ron Rivera and whoever else believed in him and said that he had these tools because we groomed them to be this type of person. It ain't because of them, it's because of Sam. So that's where I'm like, their arguments is just it's kind of frustrating because they're trying to confuse us or believe that, or try to believe some stuff that they don't even really believe. It's just filtering and messaging and hoping that everything comes to life at the end of the day, and hope that it doesn't backfire and show, like, throw them up right in their face, bro. I just don't. It's dangerous, bro.
Yeah, I feel like Ron Rivera is hoping that this pans out with Sam Howell, so he can look like a genius, or that can help give him an extra oomph to possibly get back with another team in the NFL after he's fired. Because I keep saying this, like, some people might think I'm just being a hater or whatever. I don't like Ron Rivera, but there's no way in hell that he can save his job here, like with new ownership and possibly a new GM. But the likelihood of a Sam Howell, 5th-round quarterback, working in the league is unrealistic. Just look around the league. Most of the guys that we view as the top-tier quarterbacks are first-rounders. Like, you ain't seeing a bunch of 4th, 5th, 6th-round quarterbacks out there among your top 10 or your top 15. Like, you just not seeing that. And I truly believe that it's been a battle within that organization on what they should do at quarterback. But ultimately, Ron Rivera makes the call, and he's making the call that Sam should get a crack at it. But there's also people in that building like, what if this fails? That's why the importance of securing a backup such as Jacoby Brissett and his veteran leadership and what he brings to a team in general is important. But if Sam doesn't look good in preseason and you have to start Jacoby Brissett going into week 1, like, that changes everything in regards to this team. Like, that changes the whole perspective of how the fans looked at it. Like, maybe some of us, we can break down the dynamics and say, oh, we understand that's a competition and things could go wrong. But there's people that are buying season tickets. There's people that root for this team and spend a lot of money with this team that truly believe that Sam Howell is QB1. And in no way have they made it seem like he's not supposed to be the starter. But if Jacoby Brissett goes out there and balls with preseason, which he probably will, you can't lie to the fans and what they're saying on tape and what they're saying in practice and training camp, because those fans eventually gonna go to training camp to those open practices.
Hold on, player. Now, AJ, to your point, I'm not saying you wrong. I'm saying hold on, because damn well fans gonna lie to themselves. They're gonna lie.
They will. They already are.
They're gonna convince themselves that Sam Howell is it, regardless of what Jacoby looked like. And that's gonna be the frustrating thing for them, because they're ultimately gonna get let down. But that's another thing, AJ, to your point. Like, people forget, like, and I said it, and you just alluded to it as well. Like, opportunity is the key word. They're going to give him the opportunity. People are forgetting that Sam Howell is not the starting quarterback yet, and he may not win the job. But I think another thing to add to it, I get a floor back to y'all, is like they're talking as if he's the starting quarterback. So that this is the beginning of the mixed messaging. Once again, like, is he the starting quarterback, or are you going to give him the opportunity? Because you're talking like you're making the argument that he is it, and he's not it yet.
And so for me to chime in on this is, I'm not like AJ when it comes to Ron. Like, I don't hate Ron Rivera, but I see his flaws. And this is one of those things that I have a problem with this regime, is that they try to talk up to the fan base. They try to convince us of things with their talking, versus their actions. And Ron is like, well, I'm an action person, but he talks a lot. Like, they try to tell us these things like, oh, we had a 2nd-round grade on Sam Howell. Well, if you had a 2nd-round grade on Sam Howell at quarterback, a position which you were desperate, although you already traded for Carson Wentz, why did you draft a 3rd defensive tackle over him? You drafted Percy Butler over him, and you drafted Brian Robinson over him, a running back. So you drafted 3 positions that's not anywhere close to the quarterback position in terms of value and importance on the field. You drafted that over Sam Howell, who you allegedly had a late 1st or a 2nd-round, 3rd-round grade over. So to me, it's not adding up. Like, your words aren't adding up to your actions, at this point. And we've already talked ad nauseum about how Sam could have started probably earlier, but Ron gave us the whole song and dance, and Taylor Heineke had to convince Ron to start Sam Howell in a meaningless football game to end the season. So what are your real thoughts on Sam Howell? At this point, I feel like they're just trying to convince us, the fan base, that Sam Howell is the guy. And again, Mual, I don't have an issue with Sam Howell, the player. I mean, I think Sam Howell, could be something. I don't know. We don't have a large enough sample size to know what Sam Howell is in this league or what he isn't. But it just feels like they're blowing smoke up our asses like they've done for the last couple of years when they've gone at quarterbacks. They've told us Ryan Fitzpatrick might be the guy. But then again, to your point about the quarterback competition, about Jacoby Brissett, we've heard the last 3 years that there was a quarterback competition, but we didn't, except for Carson Wentz. I felt like they gave Carson Wentz that, that opportunity because Carson needed that. After the whole Philadelphia thing, we heard about how fragile Carson's feelings were. They wanted Carson to feel wanted.
Sad, bro.
Yes.
Everybody from the organization came out defending that man in the offseason.
Right.
Coddling Carson Wentz, bro.
And they did. Even Ron came out last year when they drafted Sam Howell and said, Sam Howell is just a backup quarterback. He's a developmental guy. We just needed an ideal backup. Now they're telling us Sam could be more than an ideal backup. But before Carson Wentz, the 2 years, they told us that there was a competition with Dwayne Haskins and Kyle Allen and Alex Smith. But I think everyone knew that there was no competition. They were going to give Dwayne Haskins the start to the season regardless of what happened. The next year, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Taylor Heineke, they said it was a quarterback competition. I think we all knew that Ryan Fitzpatrick was their guy that year, and that's what's going to happen this year as far as a quarterback competition with Jacoby Brissett and Sam Howell. They're going to give Sam Howell the starting job to start the year. Now, whether Sam Howell starts the rest of the season or not, that's another story. But they're going to sell us on a competition, and I don't think we're going to get a competition. I think Sam Howell is the guy that they want to trot out there, and the reason for that is because this is their last chance to strike gold. They know they're not going to strike gold with Jacoby Brissett. Everyone kind of knows what Jacoby Brissett is. He's a solid quarterback. He's top of the line backup quarterbacks. Probably not a guy that you want starting full seasons if you want any sustained success in the NFL. But Sam Howell is their last chance to strike gold for this regime. Now they know I don't know if they know that Sam Howell is great or what they're selling us that Sam Howell is, but if Sam Howell is anything, if Sam Howell is close to top 10, maybe he's in the Derek Carr range, maybe he's in the 12 to 15 range. If he's any of that, it makes Ron and them look right, and it makes Ron and them look good. So that's why Sam Howell is going to get the initial start to this season, and it's not going to be a real competition. And that's why they're trying to sell fans and pump fans up that saying we're all in on Sam Howell. It's not necessarily that they think Sam Howell is it, but they want Sam Howell to be it because that's their last chance to strike gold as this regime. Because if he is more than what he is, then Sam Howell gives them some kind of lease on life because they decided on Sam Howell. But if Sam Howell is not, they can say, we have Jacoby Brissett as a backup option, and we know we can float above water with Jacoby Brissett. That's just my thoughts on it.
Not just Jacoby, think about what they were willing to do in this year's draft. Part of the article that Keim wrote was that Washington would have been tempted to take Hendon Hooker if he was available in the third round. And that kind of shows obviously Hendon is coming off an ACL injury, but I'll have to look it up. But I do remember reading that he would have been available around training camp or preseason. Same around the same time span, but he would have been available around that time. So that kind of tells you if he wouldn't have been out the loop for a whole year, he would have been around. He would have been able to get some snaps. Not necessarily saying start any games in 2023, but they would have been able to see him play in practice in 2023. So to that point, does that kind of show anybody that think about it. Hendon, his last 2 years, if I had to pull up his stats, they were crazy. He threw less than 10 interceptions and he threw nearly 60 touchdowns in his last 2 seasons as a starter. So for Washington, they're not looking at him as, okay, he's just going to be a backup for us. He's a potential starter down the line. So for Washington, I think of what they're saying about Sam, what they put out there in the past about Hendon, or past meaning recently about Hendon, but just like thinking like all of these things culminate to a team who is really just throwing things out there and hoping something sticks. Because if they cover their bases in all areas, they don't really have anything to worry about.
But
Um,
Maul, you
yep.
even forgetting about the rumor that and came from a credible source that they were possibly going to try to move up if Anthony Richardson wasn't
Oh
taken
yeah,
within those
Mike
first 3
Jones.
picks.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's like that's why I said when they came out with the Sam Howell thing, I'm like, I don't know who they think they fooling, but I'm not one of them, and I know my co-host on this show ain't one of those either. Like, we not being fooled by what y'all doing here. Y'all just know that y'all don't really have the guts to try to repeat what you did the year you acquired Carson Wentz again, because you know the likelihood is slim to none. Even with Eric Bieniemy being the OC, look how long that process took to even get an OC. Like, like that was a long process to get an offensive coordinator, to the point where it's like, might they even have an OC going into the season? But it's like, I don't know. I'm just thinking of storylines to come for the season, and I think that is going to be one of the major ones alongside the ownership group becoming official, because it's like every little nuance at that position in practices that are open for the media to see and for fans to see in training camp is going to be over evaluated
Mm-hmm.
and over analyzed, because hey, they made it a competition instead of just rocking with the fact, okay, we gonna live and die by our decision. We gonna give everything to Sam Howell. Pick a guy. You feel me? Especially at quarterback, why you need to make it a competition? Can you imagine if they had ended up being able to select Hendon Hooker in the 3rd round?
It would have
Like,
been crazy.
it would have been insane. But it's like, just pick your guy at quarterback, because once again, your team needs to be able to rally around someone, and they need to be able to understand who they're looking forward to at that position, because that's one of the most important positions of an NFL team. And right now, they're up in limbo. It's like you got a 5th round pick that played in one game, 19 attempts, and you got a veteran savvy quarterback that has won a Super Bowl, that has also played with winning organizations, and also did a damn good job, filling in for Deshaun Watson until he could step in. And you have them battling each other. It makes no sense. Just rock with your guy. If he falters, then you go with Jacoby Brissett, because he's used to that role already. So he's not going to complain.
But so the issue I think they have with the whole quarterback competition is they worry too much about the optics. They worry too much about what people may think if they say, "Oh, we're just going to rock with Sam Howell." I think that's the worry of Ron and his regime. They're worried people are going to think that, "Oh, we're just handing this job over to this guy," versus, "Oh, he actually earned it." Like, they want people to feel like a guy has earned it. But
Hell
then
yeah.
that can backfire on them if the guy comes out there and looks like ass. Then that makes them look like fools. When you feel like you gave this guy a job, and most of the fans we watch preseason, like you said, some fans they come out to training camp. We can see with our own eyes who looks better. But if you tell me that this guy won because he earned it and he comes out, he looks like ass, you look foolish. But they think that they look good in saying that we had a quarterback competition and this guy earned it. He won it flat out. That this is why he has the job. So that's why I think they go with the whole quarterback competition conversation a lot of the times.
Here's another angle to this, with how generally, and I want to be clear with everybody. Even though I know AJ isn't too high on how, I even think that I don't think any of us are like personally against how. Like, you can have your opinion whether you think he's going to be good or not, but I don't even think that nobody is personally against how succeeding. But it's not even his fault. It's how things are being phrased, and to that degree, I want to slip this in here because I saw somebody, and I'm cool with the guy, and I'm not even gonna like
Say his name.
Go,
Say his name.
I ain't
Say his
even
name.
going. I ain't even going. I ain't
Say
even
his
going
name.
down. I ain't
Say
even
his
going
name.
down that route.
Say
But
his name.
the reason why this comment is coming up is because he represents a larger community of people, and there are people who are forgetting how things played out last season. We kind of touched on it at the beginning of this conversation, Dre and AJ, when we talked about when they selected him and the opportunities that they had to select him before he got picked in the 5th round. But don't rewrite the history and the facts of the matter. If they really liked him, they would have took him earlier. That's the first and foremost, like that's the most blunt way of saying this, right? But outside of that, think about the second round grades that people were saying, or he was the second or third best quarterback in this draft, the 2022 draft. Like all of these things that are saying that, but at the end of the day, like if you were good enough to be selected in the first 2 rounds, you would be good enough to get selected in the first 2 rounds. There was one quarterback who got selected in the first round, in the first 2 rounds, and that was Kenny Pickett. He got selected at the end of the first round. And you're telling me that every single team, including the Washington Commanders, didn't think that he was good enough to get selected until 5 rounds or 4 rounds after the first? Like, there are reasons for why he slipped that far. And I think what's dangerous as well, in the main reason, like I was thinking about him, that one person in particular, but the main reason why I thought about that is because I saw a comment on on Instagram where I rarely dive into, but I was like, you know what, let me give it 2 minutes and just see what people are talking about. Like, I think Instagram is just as similar as Facebook, like in terms of like the blind homerism. Like it's crazy over there. And people are convincing themselves that, you know, the league messed up in find or allowing Howell to fall that far, but they're not asking themselves, they're not asking the questions why he fell. And their responses are simple. He didn't have help. Like he lost all his help. If he lost all his help, that shouldn't allow him to fall that far. Like there are deeper reasons for why evaluators felt that he was a 5th round draft pick. It is not because he's 5 or 6 feet tall. Bryce Young got selected and he's 5'11". He was the number 1 overall pick. And obviously Bryce Young had a different circumstances playing in Alabama. But the point is, if you pointed to the height being a reason, like if he was 2 or 3 feet taller, or 2 or 5 inches taller, let's just say that, he would be a 1st round pick. That's not true either. Like you don't fall that far. Like there are 6'5" quarterbacks who fall in the 4th or 5th round. Davis Mills was a 3rd round pick or a 4th round pick. He's 6'4".
And Mual, not to cut you off, but North Carolina, the year after Sam Howell left, they got a stud quarterback in Drake May with pretty much a lot of that same supporting cast that Sam Howell had. And he's talked about as, you know, the top 2 quarterbacks coming into the 2024 draft.
And watch how they do your boy Drake. I guarantee Drake May won't be the 2nd quarterback they talk about next year.
So when you think about all those factors, man, it's just kind of crazy. And I want people who listen to us, who at least know us, right? If random people come through on YouTube, we appreciate you watching. Make sure you hit the subscribe button because we're gonna keep it a buck with you all the goddamn time. But you understand that we're not gonna bullshit you. And like, as much as we may like Sam Howell, I love the idea. I keep saying it. I love the idea of giving him the QB1 opportunity for this year for several reasons that's beyond like seeing what he can do, but it's financially beneficial. You were able to re-sign a couple players, including Deron Payne. And you were able to reload in other areas of the roster, right? But like, don't fool yourself in thinking that he was a 5th round pick because he lost all his draft talent or lost all his talent around him in 2021 that led him to fall in, or that he's 6 feet tall and nobody wants a 6-foot quarterback in the 1st round. That's a damn lie, because there were mock drafts up until the day of the draft who had him in the 1st round and he fell into the 5th.
Bruh, it's because people are trying to use anything to fit their conversation. Think about Anthony Richardson that just went 4 to the Colts. Any of his wide receivers get drafted? His running backs get drafted?
Not only that, AJ.
And he ain't had the numbers.
That's where I was going. Bruh, AJ, this man, Anthony Richardson, bruh, similar to numbers to Josh Allen coming out of college. And he went 4th overall, AJ. That man, Anthony Richardson went 4th overall to the Indianapolis Colts, had around 56% completion percentage, similar to Josh Allen. And you're telling me that you didn't want people, not anybody, like you can literally have your opinion on whether or not you like the player or not. But if your argument is about his accuracy or that you believe that he can't read a defense, that man is balling in the SEC, making plays in the SEC, and the potential is through the roof. And they took him. It was good enough for him to get taken 4th overall. And a coordinator who I just found out was with Kentucky, and I don't remember his name verbatim, but the Indianapolis Colts has a coach on their staff who was the coordinator at Kentucky, and he chose to take Anthony Richardson over Will Levis. Like, all of these things tell you that this is a person who has the opportunity to become bigger than what his college numbers was if he continues developing. And I think, like, all of these reasons, like, it's just foolish to think that Anthony Richardson can't do what he can do on the next or can't be better on the next level with better coaching around him, better supporting cash, and better overall talent, like on both sides of the football, and win games. Like, that's just foolish. And when you think about Sam Howell, you're saying that you're better off, like Sam Howell is a better overall prospect. Like, I saw people on Instagram saying that he was more mobile than Anthony Richardson.
Right. And I think Sam runs a 5-something in the 40.
He's slow as hell.
So that's the other thing. People think he's like some athletic quarterback. Nah, he moved a little bit, but he not running no 4.5 out here, no 4.6.
No, AJ, actually, when I look at Sam Howell, and people will look at Sam Howell's rushing stats in college, and they'll assume he's just this running, scrambling quarterback, and that's not the case. That's just what North Carolina asked him to do. They ran a lot of RPOs. They ran a lot of quarterback option run plays at North Carolina his last year. But to me, Sam Howell was kind of similar to Tim Tebow on how they used him in college, that last year at least. Tim Tebow wasn't the most athletic person. I wouldn't think of Tim Tebow as a Michael Vick or even an Anthony Richardson when it comes to running the ball. It's just what they asked out of the quarterback to do that final year. It doesn't mean he's like this superior athlete. We've seen what kind of athlete Tim Tebow was at the next level. I always likened Tim Tebow as a fullback playing quarterback at Florida. I mean, that's pretty much how they use Tim Tebow. I mean, and Sam Howell is like a similar athlete in that fashion. But I don't expect Sam Howell to go out there and be this great running quarterback. I do think he has good pocket awareness. I do think he's going to be able to evade, pass rusher. I think he has a good feel in the pocket. But I think a lot of fans have this misconception that he's a running quarterback or that he's just going to be this great scrambling QB. And that's just not the type of player Sam Howell is. Now, I love Sam Howell's arm. Like, I saw a conversation earlier, Matt Miller, the draft analyst on ESPN, he said Sam Howell doesn't have a strong arm, and I just thought that was preposterous. I mean, Sam Howell has a pretty good arm. I mean, he's not a Mahomes or anything with his arm, but he has a damn good arm. Where I saw
like Colt McCoy in the same tweet.
Yeah, Colt McCoy's a noodle arm. He said that he's a similar player to Colt McCoy in that he doesn't have a great arm and he have a similar body type. And I'm like, Colt McCoy was made out of paper mache, and Colt McCoy had a noodle arm who might not be stronger than Heineke. So that was a lazy comp to me, So, I mean, like I said, I'm not bashing Sam Howell. I'm actually intrigued by the prospect of Sam Howell. And with you, Mual, I'm glad that they are giving Sam Howell this opportunity. And I hope he does win the job over Jacoby Brissett because, I mean, as a fan, literally, we don't know what Sam Howell can do as a full-time quarterback in the NFL. So that's the intrigue with Sam Howell. And that's why I'm intrigued, especially this year. And I wasn't really overly excited about the prospects this year in the draft or even maybe the available options, maybe in free agency or trades. So Sam Howell, to me, I'm intrigued and I'm okay and I'm rooting for Sam Howell. But I do think a lot of fans, go out of context when they're looking at Sam Howell. They'll look at his college rushing stats and say, oh, Sam Howell's this, athletic running dude. And that's not the case. As AJ said, this guy runs pretty much a 5 flat in the 40. I mean, he's not that type of athletic specimen. He just did what he was asked to do at North Carolina that last year. And he did it pretty well. I mean, he ran the ball. Like I said, it was a lot of RPOs. It was a lot of QB design run plays. but he's not a guy that's going to go out there and be a Vic or Richardson or Russell Wilson when it comes to scrambling and everything. I mean, and that's okay. He doesn't have to be. We want him to be a better passer than that anyway. But I do think a lot of fans get carried away when talking about Sam Howell.
Fellas, let's get out of here with this one. What is Ron's end game? We've seen this story before. It doesn't matter who he brings in, right? He tried to bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick at one point, and he was very content with his decision. He thought that the roster after 1 year was ready to compete, and that's why Fitzpatrick played a part in signing on that 1 year deal. Carson Wentz, same deal. Like, he thought that this roster was ready to win now. And he thought that he found his quarterback who can finally get him a chance. Blew up in his face. Luckily, he did draft Sam Howell, right? So now you have Sam Howell. And all we hear at this point are things of nothing but pure positivity, we believed in him from the get-go, essentially. And we would have taken him earlier if we didn't take Carson Wentz. Like, if woulda, coulda, shoulda. Like, if Candy's in butts, I'm gonna mess that one up. So I'm gonna leave that go. But you get my point. Like, all of these things where they're saying positive things about the quarterbacks that they plan on starting. But finally we're in a position where Ron is basically making his final argument for why he needs to be around beyond 2023. Whether or not he stays, that's up to him. In ownership, primarily 110% ownership. But what is his end game? Like, what does he get out of digging his heels in on Sam Howell once again, digging his heels in on another potential unknown quarterback for Washington once again? What are we getting out of this?
Again, Mual, this is Ron's last attempt to strike gold. He knows he struck out at every opportunity to acquire the quarterback that he needs. And to him, especially, and it was great for him that Sam Howell went out and had that last game against the Cowboys, because fans, at least, Sam Howell, and we talked about this before that Cowboys game. I said it. I said, this is going to be a weird situation. I said, because if Sam Howell goes out and look bad that last game, everyone's going to be like, oh, this guy, he can't play in this league. He can't play this level. But if he goes out and he plays good, everyone's going to look at it like, that's a small sample size. That's one game, So he did go out and play good. I mean, he played decent. I mean, he went out and won the game, and Sam Howell didn't put a lot of bad out there in that game.
Man, and that's overvalued. How can we say someone played good with 168 yards? What was it? 1 touchdown and 1 interception.
But he didn't throw up on himself,
AJ. Was god awful.
It was. But again, and that's what I was saying, AJ. And that was my point before the Cowboys game. I said, even if Sam Howell goes out there, he lights up. He didn't light it up, but he didn't throw up on himself. But he, at the same time, it gave some people something to cling on to. That Cowboys game, they can go back and they can say Sam Howell, he threw this long pass, he made a rusher touchdown, whatever the case may be. Sam Howell didn't throw up on himself, and they won the game. So Ron Rivera, I think, is using that to his advantage to say, hey, look, this guy can play. And we knew he could play, even though a lot of us, all three of us here, we can sit up here and say Ron was being disingenuous because, again, if he knew Sam Howell could play, why didn't Sam Howell start earlier? Why did Carson Wentz start against the Browns? Why didn't Sam Howell get that opportunity? You were clearly over Taylor Heineke at that point. So why did you trot Carson Wentz back out there and not trot Sam Howell out there, who you quote unquote knew can play, and you've been watching them all season? So that's the thing. Like, Ron is using this to his advantage to say, hey, he played pretty decent against the Cowboys. We're going to go out there, and this is our guy for the year. You saw what he can do, and we've been watching him all year. So that's just my whole point. That's just how Ron is kind of using this to his advantage. But we don't know what Sam Howell can do. But that one little game gives Sam Howell this rope, and Ron Rivera this rope to say he's our guy going into the next season, and he might be that guy that gives me this extension on life as a coach in the NFL.
But god damn, like, the passes that Sam even did complete They were so basic. Like it wasn't hard passes. And honestly, Sam's best pass that he throws is the deep ball. So I'm not impressed by that ball down the field to Terry. That's a pass you're supposed to make if you're an NFL quarterback. You feel me? Or throwing somebody a slant. Like those plays were wide open. If you really go back and look at the highlights of the completions that he had during that game, you're like, this is basic ass football. You feel me?
I
Like
think it was placement that impressed them. Like that
because
was
the bar is so low. Like you literally watched during that season Taylor Heineke and Carson Wentz. The bar
Bro,
is so
I
low.
was just finna say, and I'm gonna let you finish, AJ. I swear. Like that, the funniest thing that I thought of earlier today, or if not today, it was yesterday, was like in 20 years from now, when we finally, whenever it is that we finally have like a quarterback that's like a top 10 quarterback, we're gonna look back at Taylor Heineke and realize that we were really rooting for a terrible guy. For a terrible quarterback, bro. Like he was producing little to nothing here in Washington. And it's gonna be hilarious when you see what good quarterback play is. And we were comparing everything that we had after Taylor Heineke to Taylor Heineke.
I don't even know what this fan base is gonna do when they have a consistent quarterback that's elite at this point. Because the way that they even talk about Sam Howell right now, you would think this motherfucker ran runner up for MVP of the league. Like that's how they really be talking up Sam Howell. They act like nobody else should be even an option to consider at that position. So it's like I already seen, and we've seen how they acted when when RG3 had his rookie year. He was a god and never was able to replicate that again. But in that one season of him doing what he did, he was a god in this town, and even in national media, he was treated as an elite player. So it's like, if you get a guy like they don't even need to be Patrick Mahomes. If they just were, damn, who's a top 5 quarterback?
Derek Carr, and y'all know I don't like him, but if
they were Justin Herbert, because I think Justin Herbert is overrated. Like there's a lot in his game that I don't care for, but some people still view him as a top 5 quarterback in this league. If Washington even had a Justin Herbert, he would be a god here.
And it's, Mual, is funny because I actually mentioned, I was talking to someone on Twitter today, they was giving Sam Howell prediction numbers, and they were saying, I'm giving the most, it's my guy Damo DMV, he's a good dude, I've been knowing him for years, but Damo said that his prediction for the season was, he said a lot of y'all are giving out a lot of unrealistic predictions about Sam Howell, but I predict he'll have like 35 or 3,800 yards, somewhere in that range. But he also put that he'll have 24 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. And I'm like, even that is a little unrealistic of an expectation, that TD interception ratio, because that's almost top 10-ish in a sense. I mean, if you look at the guys that have that type of interception or touchdown interception ratio, it's usually the top 10 guys. I mean, so for Sam Howell, I would think a good season and a realistic season is a Derek Carr type of season. If he has a Derek Carr type of season, I think that's a good season for Sam Howell. I mean, that's not not an unrealistic expectation, and that puts him somewhere in that 15 range, that top 15 range of quarterbacks in the NFL, and that's good for Washington. I mean, I don't know how that extends Sam Howell's life here, with new ownership coming in, but that's a good realistic expectation for Sam Howell, is somewhere in that Derek Carr tier. And that's where you want him to be. If he's anywhere below that, then that's not good for Sam Howell.
And to that point, man, and like when you mention top 15, if you get top 20, like consistent top 20 quarterback play with random spouts of top 10 quarterback play on that given week, you're talking about a team who is in the hunt for a playoff spot. Like undoubtedly, like I love what the roster looks like from the defensive line standpoint. I like what they did with the secondary in this offseason, specifically the draft, to help build that depth up. We'll kind of see down the line what it actually looks like when the games are played. But I like what they did from the defensive line. I like what they did from the secondary. I like where their receivers are. I like that they added to the running back spot, right? And then offensive line is still a question mark, because you don't know, like with these new position groups or new players at these position groups, what it's going to look like with Bieniemy and stuff like that. But I also love the fact that they brought in Eric Bieniemy. Like, these are all things that kind of points to the fact that if you can get consistent quarterback play on a week-to-week basis, you're talking about a team who can get you duplicate the same amount, at least the same amount of wins that they had last year, and then go from there. Now, you don't know if you'll miss out on the playoffs again. If I had to bank on it, I would, or if I had to bet on it, I would say that we probably do miss the playoffs because I don't trust the coach. But I think that this roster has slowly developed into developed into a solid roster to the point where you're looking at finally a wild card spot again, because you're not going to win the division, but you're looking at a wild card spot. And who knows where that takes you, because the Cowboys are really good. The Giants I think they've arguably gotten better or at least just as good as you in one offseason with the moves that they made, especially on the defensive side of the football. So to that point, like, you're going to have competition, but this roster is solid enough to compete for a playoff spot. So overall, like, I like what they did on the roster. You just don't know what's going to happen with that quarterback spot if you don't have consistent quarterback play. So, yeah, man.
Your main questions is quarterback, head coach and quarterback.
Yeah.
The two most
How about this
for a football team?
How about this then? So if we get, let's say I'm gonna go even further. If we get consistent top 15 quarterback play this season, we are all allowed to change our answer after we see some games in the preseason, right? But if you get top 15 consistent quarterback play from this team, it doesn't even have to be Sam Howell. It could be Jacoby Brissett. Like, if Sam Howell loses competition, what do you see this team winning in terms of a win-loss standpoint? Can you see 9 wins? Can you see 10 wins?
Yeah, and see, that's the thing. None of us here have made, to my knowledge, we haven't made any declarations on what we think Sam Howell is. We're talking about the conversation around Sam Howell,
yes,
or whoever is,
and the process that led them to Sam Howell. Like, exactly. That's literally it.
Yes, the process. Like I said, I don't have an issue with Sam Howell. I mean, I'm not high on Sam Howell. I don't have this, overconfidence in Sam Howell. But I mean, he can be whatever. But if Sam Howell is a top 15 guy, or if Jacoby Brissett gives us top 15 play, yes, we can absolutely say, hey, because that's all we're doing right now is just waiting and seeing what's going on. Like, we don't know. We don't have enough on what we have right now to say that this team is going to be anything more than what they have been under the Ron Rivera regime. But I do agree that if you are getting top 15, and I'm not getting, because I don't know, I don't have an expectation that we're going to have a top 15 quarterback. But if we do have that, you would have to assume that you're going to be better than 7 and 8 wins, pretty much what Ron has given us in his regime. I mean, because we've had bottom 5 to bottom 10 quarterback play in his 3 years so far, and then we've won 7 to 8 games, with him every year that he's been here. So you have to expect, if you're going to have top 15 play, that you're going to be at least 2 to 3 games better as a team, especially if you've upgraded on defense. And I do think they have gotten better on defense in Ron Rivera's tenure. We were pretty bad in 2021, but 2022 it was better. 2020 was good, but I also thought 2020 was a little overrated, but 2021 was bad. 2022, I thought they were a lot better. And I think personnel-wise, we have upgraded. So if you get top 15 play, I don't see why you shouldn't expect 2 to 3 more wins at the very minimum of this franchise.
Damn, for me, sheesh. I think if Sam Howell is a starter for the entire season, I think they still miss the playoffs.
No, we are consistent. It don't matter who's starting. Consistent top 50. We said top 15, right? Yeah, top 15. Right?
I hate
Sam or Jacoby.
I would say the quarterback needs to be top 10. I hate top 15 talks.
That's all right.
But if they're top 10s, they can make the playoffs. Will they win a playoff game? No clue. But they could possibly get to the playoffs, especially if the defense plays how they left the season off at the end of the year. Even with the ups and downs, they could possibly be a 7 seed. Luckily, there's now 7 seeds instead of just 6.
So
I feel like everyone that made the playoffs in the NFC East, the NFC got better.
Yeah,
increasingly better.
Yes. Yes.
And I don't think that Washington has got better. I think they added some pieces, but to say that they pushed the mark
Well,
to
outside of
now
San
being,
Fran, San Fran stayed the same for real for the most part, but that's it.
yeah,
And they still
But
good.
how much better did the Giants get though? I don't think the Giants got that much better.
Their
Honestly.
defense, I like
Yeah,
their
I
defense.
mean they got Darren Waller too, who's a good target. I mean, but you still have
Mhm.
Daniel Jones at quarterback. I mean, how much better did the Giants get?
well, I mean, you've now added some weapons to where they can't really stay in the box. They also got Jalen Hyatt
Oh yeah,
alongside with the other wide receivers that they added. But most importantly, Daniel Jones gets to be in this offense for another year. So you can't really stack the box like you used to do because they have a tight end that they can hit off the play action, especially if they get the run game started. I just feel like a Darren Waller, especially for that particular team, makes a lot of a difference. And if those guys on the outside can play any better than what they got from Kenny Golladay and even Isaiah Hodgins, I've told y'all on here, I feel like he has solid potential. I just think that they're better. But every other team in their that made the playoffs, I feel like got better. Like Minnesota added another wide receiver to go alongside Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison was a dog, like at Pitt and at USC. And I don't expect that to change. Their defense could be better, but I feel like they've added more pieces to really play that 3-4 that they want to. But I don't really feel like Washington got increasingly better for me to say, damn, like they could possibly get to the playoffs, but shit, it's not gonna be they win in the NFC East. They're gonna be the 7th seed if they make it.
I'm with you. Hawk says that first of all, let me preface his statements. He said, "Do y'all think that we're better than the Seahawks, Cowboys, Vikings, San Fran?" He says that he has us at 2-15. I don't trust this team, and I don't think we got better. And it, from oh yeah, go ahead, Dre. Yep.
I was just gonna say, I think Hawk. Speaking of emotion, I like Hawk. And Hawk is real. I mean, he's being real. Now, Hawk, I will say, if you are right, I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind the 2-15 season, especially with new ownership coming in, because like you said, we get Caleb Williams coming in. I mean, whoever we will get our quarterback if we are what you think we are, Hawk. I just don't see it, man. I don't think this roster will
There's
win
no
2
way
games, man.
this roster could never get to 2-15. But all you should do is pray each and every day at the end of the night or throughout your day that whoever ends up with the first pick in the draft overall doesn't need a quarterback.
Okay.
Because that's the only thing that could really save Washington at the end of this year. Because I don't expect Sam Howell to necessarily work out, but at least they'll have a new organization leader and GM that will be more aggressive and try their best to acquire that first pick in the draft.
So 2 more things. Hawk said last take, I got them trading one of the defensive ends. And then last thing I saw on Twitter just now at 8:12 p.m. Sam Howell 2023 predictions. 4,800, 17 passing yards, 37 passing touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 803 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns. # left hand up at Commanders. So we're gonna end it there.
Yeah,
Shout out to him. Shout out to that Sam Howell prediction, man. Y'all take it easy. Yeah, we ain't gonna worry about that. We ain't even gonna worry about that.
Why can't we call these people out?
We're gonna go ahead and end the show right now because that's all we need to talk about. Is the we done talked about Sam Howell and Ron Rivera this whole show. We're gonna end it right there with that prediction, bro. It's a dude. I'm real cool with Cuz too. So Sam Vic. No, Monty, we ain't even gonna talk about it, bro. But yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for us, man. Y'all be easy. Take it easy. We do have an interview lined up as it stands today for next week. So if we're not live, heads up. If we're not live Monday, we will have a show regardless next week. Just stay tuned for that one once we get things lined up. But yeah, we're out of here. Y'all be easy. Take it safe. All that good stuff. Peace.